Hey everyone! I didn't know if I was going to do this season, since it technically is not a part of the Total Drama series, and I was just focused on other things. It is hard to talk about this spin-off compared to the other competition seasons, since it isn't a social or strategic game, it's solely reliant on competition wins, and there are so many characters. Overall, it was a nice reboot for the franchise, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to when I watched it the first time as it aired, and as I rewatched it recently. None Down, 18 to Go, Part 1 is the first episode of the spin-off, and I thought it was a good episode as you get to see most of their personalities, and I liked the challenge. At the same time, due to there being so many pairs and even more individuals, there are a lot of others that didn't make much of an impression. Jack and Jose, Jeff and Brody, Tom and Jen, MacArthur and Sanders, Noah and Owen, Kitty and Emma, Carrie and Devin are enjoyable. Leonard and Tammy, Jay and Mickey, and Lorenzo and Chet annoyed me. Everyone else I found to be pretty forgettable. None Down, 18 to Go 2 is a continuation of the first episode, and it didn't leave that much of a strong impression on me, which happens with a lot of the two-part introduction episodes with the show. Since everyone was already introduced in the first part, a lot of the pairs are even more under the radar / invisible and don't leave any impression. The only ones I liked were Jack and Jose, MacArthur and Sanders, Jeff and Brody, and Lori and Miles. Jay and Mickey, Lorenzo and Chet, and Leonard and Tammy really grated my gears in the episode. So, Leonard and Tammy are booted here, and it was annoying seeing Leonard back under any capacity, and I would have preferred anyone else from Total Drama to come back. He is just as bad here as he was in Pakatu Island, and Tammy was mostly silent, but anyone who enables his BS is immediately on my crap list, so I dislike them. French is an Eiffel language is a great episode, and I really enjoyed the challenge here compared to the last two, as well as the location. Noah and Owen, Kitty and Emma's banter, Jack and Jose in general, MacArthur and Sanders, Dwayne and Junior's dynamic, Tom and Jen, Lori and Miles, and Ryan and Stephanie's lovey-dovey stuff was great. Of course, there were a bunch of other forgettable teams during the episode, and the only people that annoyed me here were Lorenzo and Chet, as their bickering and plotline was grating and one-dimensional. Jerry and Pete were given the boot, and I actually would have liked to have seen a bit more of them for a bit longer, but they really weren't much of a loss, since they had a very one-dimensional dynamic and didn't have any more potential to go from it. They were solid presences that could get you a laugh here and there, but they were never going to be the most memorable or rootable pairs of this bunch. Mediterranean Homesick Blues was a pretty meh episode, and I didn't really care much for the location or the challenge, but it is watchable and nothing is grating or annoying, except for Lorenzo and Chet, which is the usual at this point. A lot of the pairs did not stand out in my opinion throughout the episode, though this was where Dwayne and Junior started to grow into their own as an interesting team. Lori and Miles has their vegan stuff become more prominent here, Tom and Jen and Jeff and Brody are very humorous, and Jack and Jose remain amazing throughout the episode. I think one of the reasons why this episode was mad to me is that Elodie and Mary are given focus here, and they were the most forgettable team up to this point. They were alright in the episode, and did have a few funny quips, but nothing really stands out about them, and they got lost in the shuffle almost immediately with this large cast. Not bad characters, but not good ones either, and arguably the most forgettable ones throughout the entire franchise. I did not enjoy Bajorkin Telephone at all. I'm pretty sure I butchered that pronunciation, but I tried my best. I found the challenge to be kind of boring in my opinion. I didn't like the eating part of the challenge, and the sadism, especially against the vegans, was a bit too much for me. It also does not help that it's a non-elimination episode, so you feel like absolutely nothing was really accomplished. Despite that, a lot of the pairs are enjoyable, and no one outright annoyed me throughout the episode. Standouts are Dwayne and Junior, Inoue and Crimson actually speaking and making a solid impression for the first time, and Lori and Miles having to go through their moral dilemma and having to let it go in order to go on in the competition. Ryan and Stephanie, as well as Kelly and Taylor with their increased presence, Noah and Owen, Kitty and Emma, and Rock and Spud were great here. Brazilian Pine Forest was a pretty good episode, as I really enjoyed the location of the episode, and I did find the challenge to be pretty intriguing, especially compared to the last 2 episodes. The continuous torture of the vegans got really old, in my opinion, especially with the stinging, though Rock and Spud reacting to their own situation was hilarious, especially with his delayed reaction. A lot of the pairs, like the Rockers, vegans, Jay and Mickey attempting to make an alliance with Kitty and Emma, which fails, Jeff and Brody, Dwayne and Jr., Jack and Jose, and Inua and Crimson are great here. Lori and Miles are sent home, and I don't like how they were treated in the last 2 episodes, as I did think it was a bit too much. I also was shocked at how hated they were, or are, in the fandom, but I never really got it. I found them to be humorous the entire time, whether they were going crazy or being their normal and kind of exaggerated hippie vegan selves. They didn't overstay their welcome, so going here was good. A Tisker, a casket, I'm going to blow a casket, I don't even know if I said that properly, is a really great episode, and I really love the location of Romania. It really added a different and interesting sense of scenery and brought out the best and the worst in some people. You finally see where we're getting past the quote-unquote fodder part of the season, and the major storylines of the season are starting to form. Like Ryan and Stephanie breaking up to become haters, Noah starting a romantic relationship with Emma, Inui and Crimson's excitement over the location is great to watch, and I really enjoy everyone but MacArthur and Sanders, Dwayne and Jr., Kelly and Taylor, and Carrie and Devin in the episode. Tom and Jen go home, and I'm shocked with how much I enjoyed them, especially with this rewatch. It was clear that they were a fodder team, since they never really had much of an arc at all, and I don't remember them having many great interactions or important interactions with the others, but their energy and lines were really enjoyable. They gave them a story on their final episode, and it was very enjoyable to see their friendship tested, but it was clear that they were going to be booted, since all of a sudden they got all the screen time on this episode. It was too convenient. I wouldn't have minded if they lasted longer, especially over some of the other pairs that lasted to the midpoint of the season, and they could have gone out much earlier, but they were handled very well overall. Hawaiian Honeymoon was a good episode, and I liked the challenge, especially where they have to walk over hot rocks. Jack and Jose have to deal with losing her lucky bonbon, so they accidentally get a bad luck charm instead, which is just hilarious. Kitty and Emma, as well as Carrie and Devin, and Jeff and Brody are enjoyable here. Kelly and Taylor finally get some focus, as Taylor pisses off her mother so much to the point where Kelly snaps and reveals everything Taylor knows was a lie essentially, and bought for. Ryan and Stephanie are broken up, and their arguing is kind of tiring here. Everyone else was kind of forgettable to me, and it's a non-elimination episode. Hello and Dubai has a really great challenge, and the location is so serene. Jacques and Jose are losing their minds about not getting first, and that their luck is not good. Kitty and Emma, and Noah and Owen really heated up with their interactions with one another here. Dwayne has a very funny interaction with Kelly and his son throughout the episode, and the issues with Carrie and Devin, as well as Ryan and Stephanie, were great in the episode. Taylor reacting to her life being alive was fun, and coming to some sort of agreement with her mother. Everyone else in the episode was pretty forgettable, though Jay and Mickey proved to be pretty successful at one of the challenges, and Jeff and Brody randomly copying did earn a chuckle from me. Kelly and Taylor do go home in the episode, and while I did enjoy them in the last few episodes, I did not enjoy them as much as I did when I first watched the season when it was airing. Outside of that, most of the time they were very under the radar and didn't leave much of an impression. They are overall in the okay, slightly amusing tier, despite some of their toxicity from both sides being way too much at times. New Beijinging was pretty much a filler episode in my opinion. Eating all of the worldly food led to some interesting moments, but nothing about the episode really stood out to me in my opinion. Katie and Emma was cool, and their newfound alliance that will not turn into a romance with Noah, and the alliance being with Noah and Owen, was fun to watch here. Rock and Spud's unbalanced work ethic comes up again in the episode, and I did enjoy Dwayne and Jr., Jock and Jose, MacArthur and Sanders, and Jeff and Brody, while the others were just okay at best in the episode. I always forget about this episode, so I'm going to move on to the next one. I Love Ridonculous was an enjoyable episode to me, and I liked the challenge overall, despite it being relatively simple. Anyway and Crimson have a very strong episode, where their makeup is melted, and they have to deal with how the other one looks naturally, despite dating for 3 years, and it's a nice arc where they're willing to accept one another for how they are, before that, of course, changes. If only they stuck with it, but I never thought the show would do this with them in the first place. Rock and Spud also have a great showing here, where they fail to align with everyone, and Spud steps up to give a great performance at the Rock Challenge. Jacques and Jose have been losing a lot here, and it's great to watch their confidence go down, and I enjoyed MacArthur and Sanders, Jay and Mickey, and Kitty and Emma. Ryan and Stephanie's arguing got old, though seeing him throw a tantrum on the stage and everyone loving it was pretty funny. And Noah becoming a nothing in front of Emma, and Owen begging him to get it together, had me feeling bad for Owen. Jay and Mickey are eliminated here, and I do think they could have been eliminated about 5 episodes ago. They annoyed me a lot in the first few episodes, and had a few strong showings, but were overall just kind of non-factors to me, and meh overall. Glad they proved their haters and loved ones wrong, and that they're tougher than they look. They're just not going to be one of the more memorable teams, in my opinion. I do not have a lot to say about My Way or Zimbabwe, though I did like the dancing part of the challenge. Jacques and Jose decide to blow the challenge to get rid of their cursed rock and to get their bonbon, and I just remember really liking Rock and Spud and MacArthur and Sanders throughout the episode. Carrie and Devin and Dwayne and Jr. kind of annoyed me a bit here, and the others were kind of just non-factors in my opinion. But Ryan and Stephanie became unbearable here. Meh filler episode overall. Shawshank Redemption is a mixed bag for me, since I really like some elements of the episode, and I find other elements of the episode to be very meh. In general, I did enjoy the challenge, but my main issue with the episode is how front-loaded the episode is. Jacques and Jose and MacArthur and Sanders go head-to-head in the episode, and I really, really love it, as the former got their groove back, and both have boomerangs. The Lorenzo and Chet duo finally start to bond after half the season, and I wish they did this a lot more gradually, so it actually felt like a plot, which either way I still disliked. And the only other important event is Devin getting dumped by his girlfriend, and Carrie's reaction to it. No one else in the episode left any impression on me, and it also doesn't help that this episode is the second consecutive non-elimination episode. Just why? Down and Outback picks up the much-needed pace from the last few episodes, but we do get a strong streak of episodes from here on out. The challenge was pretty fun, and I loved seeing the conflict between MacArthur and Sanders and Jack and Jose get exemplified throughout the episode, and it was just very funny. Inouye and Crimson bonding with a rabbit was funny and cute. I actually enjoyed Lorenzo and Chet for once, as well as Ryan and Stephanie, Jeff and Brody, and Rock and Spud in the episode. Devin starts going through the stages of grief to get over his breakup, which is kind of annoying, and you know from this that Devin and Carrie are automatically going to be immune for the next 6 to 7 episodes. And I didn't care for the other romance stuff that happened in the episode. Lorenzo and Chet are one of the 2 pairs eliminated here, and I found them to be annoying for a lot of their time on the season, and irrelevant on the other side as well. They could have been booted 10 episodes ago and lasted way too long based off of what they did or didn't deliver. And they didn't even do their hate-turned-friend arc well and only executed it in their last 2 episodes. Probably my least favorite team overall. Rock and Spud turned out to be surprises to me in a very good way, since I was expecting them to be one way and they ended up in another way. They really started becoming more prominent during the last 6 to 7 episodes, and I found them entertaining. I was fine with them making it to the mid portion, but they didn't need to last longer, so here was a good spot. Maui or Less is a good total drama franchise episode, and I found the challenge to be amazing, so seeing everyone react to it was great. I think because all the father teams are now gone, everyone has enough focus, and it's easy to get invested in everyone else. Dwayne and Junior are still dealing with their weird relationship, and Dwayne takes poor advice from Jeff and Brody to win over his son. MacArthur and Sanders and Jack and Jose continue to entertain me, and I liked Devin's anger in the episode, and Carrie reacting to it was fun. Noah and Emma became fairly annoying in the episode, and I felt bad for Owen and Kitty. The other two couples were non-factors to me. Little Bull on the Prairie is another great episode. Dwayne and Junior start to actually bond, but the former accidentally jinxes them, causing them to struggle throughout the episode. Jeff and Brody actually start to have some emotional moments here because Brody keeps on screwing up and Jeff has to cheer him up. It is generally the first episode of the season where I like and enjoy everyone in it. Stephanie and Ryan are a bit more vulnerable, Carrie and Darren are actually interesting in the episode, and I like the sister dynamic between Emma and Kitty. Owen has to step it up for Noah in the episode since Noah is slacking off, and the feud between MacArthur and Sanders and Jack and Jose never fails to amaze me. Dwayne and Junior are booted here after thinking that it's an elimination, and I think it was the perfect time for them to go. While I do think Junior being a know-it-all is kind of annoying at times, and Dwayne can be very cringe at times, I generally enjoyed them, and they had many great moments throughout the season. Easily one of the better pairs of the season, who weren't fodder but didn't overstay their welcome. Very wholesome pair overall. Lord of the Ring Toss is another strong episode in my opinion, and I really liked the setting as well as the challenge. Inouye and Crimson start to bond with Devin, who is going through a depression, and Carrie gets tired of all three of them. I really like the four of them in the challenge, and seeing the melodramatic scenario of Jeff screwing up and Brody trying really hard to not be mad, only to get first in the challenge anyway, was very fun. Jacques and Jose tried to sabotage the surfers, and I found them entertaining, as well as MacArthur and Sanders, as well as Kitty and Emma. Noah and Owen were kind of non-factors in this episode to me, and Ryan and Stephanie were absolutely horrendous. Their arguing got several episodes ago. But when Stephanie decides to boomerang themselves, I just wanted them to completely go. It was very grating overall, and they were just overstaying their welcome. I found Got Venom to be very lackluster of an episode, in my opinion. I did not care for the challenge whatsoever, and the location was not my favorite either. Ryan and Stephanie continue to be completely unbearable, and I'm completely over Noah and Emma's love story, and Owen and Kitty couldn't hold them up, in my opinion. And I was over the Carrie and Devin storyline, with Devin still going through the stages of heartbreak. Jacques and Jose were still enjoyable, but it was one of their lesser episodes. I liked seeing the interactions between Jeff and Brody and MacArthur and Sanders, especially between MacArthur and Brody, as Brody has a crush on MacArthur. Inouye and Crimson also have a great episode. Noah and Owen are eliminated here, and I like that they gave Noah another side to him that we never got to see on Total Drama, though I am kind of mixed on it because it was annoying, especially with Emma breaking up with him so she could focus on the game. They did tone down Owen's grossness, and he had to be the more mature and focused one out of the two, so I enjoyed him a lot more than I had in the past. Overall, I did enjoy them, and they went at the perfect time. Dude Buggies start another streak of really great episodes, and if it wasn't for the last episode causing a delay in quality, the third quarter of the season would have had a strong, uninterrupted run. The challenge was really fun, and I liked both of the options for the challenges. Kitty and MacArthur having a fun feud while driving the cars was nice, and seeing the reactions of Emma and Sanders was hilarious. Jacques and Jose throw garlic at Inouye and Crimson, who they think are vampires, was pretty fun, and the reactions to everything, especially Jacques being in the cage with the lion, was great. Devin finally got over his girlfriend and realizes that he likes Carrie, right as Carrie starts to move on, which was kind of an interesting twist on things. Jeff and Brody wasting a bunch of time driving the cars long after completing the challenge was great, and I even enjoyed Ryan and Stephanie in the episode. But I think it's because he starts to use things against her. A very entertaining episode overall. El Bunny Supremo was definitely a more emotional episode, as the fan faves were taken out, and I think everything was handled well here. Emma and Katie and Jeff and Brody were kind of under the radar and overshadowed by the other pairs in the episode, but they were fine themselves. I really liked the dynamic between MacArthur and Sanders in the episode. Jacques and Jose deciding to play dirty and kidnapping Inouye and Crimson's rabbit to make them weak was a really good move. Carrie and Ryan actually become friends at this point, as they are over the drama with their partners, and both Stephanie and Devin start to get jealous, which is a very interesting twist. Inouye and Crimson are sent home here, and when they are visible, they are amazing, and you really get behind them. I was still shocked at what was done with them during that one episode where they had to be their actual selves. But there were also way too many episodes where they were just borderline invisible, though I just like them instead of loving them, if you understand what I mean. They went out on a strong note and didn't overstay their welcome. I think Canoodling is my favorite episode of the season, but there are so many contenders for that as well. I think everyone was on their A games in this episode, as everyone was paired into groups of 3. So, teams that didn't interact much with one another throughout the season ended up interacting in this episode. It was separated by the quote-unquote good guys, which was Emma and Katie, Jeff and Brody, and Carrie and Devin, where the bad guys, like MacArthur and Sanders, Jacques and Jose, and Ryan and Stephanie, quote-unquote, get together. Each trio decide to form an alliance, but the villains turn on one another instantly, and none of the good guys wants to share the money, but Jeff and Brody. I liked that we actually saw a lot of gameplay in this episode, since the format of the season doesn't really allow it. The sisters try to help Devin win over Carrie. Devin and Stephanie are still jealous of their partners bonding with the other man/woman, and everything about the episode was just great. Jeff and Brody are eliminated here because they decided to be selfless and let Carrie and Devin pass them. I think it was a strong way for them to go, and it was interesting seeing Jeff as a person of wisdom, not just to Brody, but to a lot of the others, especially with what he went through on Total Drama and his less than savvy moments there. Out of the others that honestly made it to the second half of the season, they had the least story, and there are several episodes where they kind of just did nothing. Overall, I still enjoyed them and what they offered in the season. How Deep Is Your Love is another good episode, and most of the challenge had them go in the ground, and they travel to Russia. Ryan uses reverse psychology on Stephanie, and she gets more annoyed with Carrie and Ryan connecting, as does Devin. Jacques and Jose decide to go after the sisters next, which causes a conflict between those pairs, and the sisters want the axis of evil to target their best friends instead of them. A lot of strategy going on, which I really love seeing on Total Drama. MacArthur and Sanders are generally overshadowed for a lot of the episode, but Sanders ends up breaking her arm, and MacArthur generally feels really bad, showing another side to her and adding another layer to their partnership. In my opinion, the rest of the season kind of goes down from here, despite it being the last non-elimination episode of the season, which this episode was. I found Dargil with it to be a good episode, but not a great one. I didn't care for Jacques and Jose at all in the episode. To be honest, the cheating got old by this point, which was something that I thought I would never say about them. And I was generally over the drama stuff with Carrie and Devin, though seeing Emma and Katie kind of get Devin together was pretty fun. Speaking of the sisters, they are a lot more likable now that it is just them, and Owen and Noah are nowhere to be found. Stephanie becomes relatively weak and unmotivated in the episode, and Ryan has to cheer her up, which causes for them to reunite. And MacArthur does everything she can to make sure that Sanders is alright, and is filled with guilt, which annoys Sanders, who prefers MacArthur to go back to her old self. Ryan and Stephanie are eliminated here, and they are a huge mixed bag. I liked them enough in the beginning when they were lovey-dovey, but that got old. They then broke up, and I was interested in them for a bit, but then they dragged that out for far too long, and they became far too toxic. Seeing Carrie and Devin in the picture added another layer to their partnership, and I was hoping that they went with the unconventional route and maybe have Carrie and Ryan get together to not be predictable, but that was not going to happen. Or even just have Ryan and Stephanie stay broken up, but have them respect one another as people. They infuriated and entertained me a lot of the time, but I do think that they lasted a lot longer than they needed to, since it was clear that they were always going to eventually get back together. Last Tango in Buenos Aires was a solid episode in my opinion. Jacques and Jose continue to sabotage Emma and Kitty, which technically works until it causes for another team to get hurt, and I like how Emma and Kitty finally revealed to Devin that Carrie was in love with him for several years. MacArthur and Sanders grow closer to one another during the episode, and I found them to be hilarious through it. While it was nice that Carrie and Devin finally got together, seeing him get injured kind of ruined the moment, and then bringing another team back into their spot in the game was just lame. Carrie and Devin are eliminated, and like the last couple that was eliminated, I do think that they lasted too long, but they did throw in a few wrenches that made their predictable storyline to be more bearable and entertaining. Like I mentioned with Ryan and Stephanie, I wish they went the more unconventional route with these two not getting together. They could be endearing at times and could be bland at times, so they were a mixed bag that kind of lasted a bit too long. Something about Bahamarama just didn't connect to me, and I found it to be a very hollow and rushed episode. I think a lot of it was due to Jeff and Brody being brought back into the game at the penultimate episode, and the rumors for why they came back, being to balance the gender ratios, just kind of threw me off. And they're intentionally under the radar throughout a lot of the episodes, so they could just float on by. I wonder if this episode went through a lot of last-minute changes, since everything seemed so painfully rushed. I generally enjoyed all the other teams, though, with Emma and Kitty bonding even more, Jose backstabbing MacArthur, who chose to save her, while Sanders and Jacques were great additions as well. Emma and Kitty were a great team, where Emma was very guarded, serious, strict, and kind of mean in the beginning, who learned how to open up more and more to bond with her sister, Kitty, and to fall in love again after being heartbroken in the past. Kitty was a nice presence, but she's definitely the stereotypical late millennial / Gen Z with the social media stuff. They were great in the last few episodes, and the first few episodes, though kind of got tiring in the middle. A Million Ways to Lose $1 Million was a great finale, just due to the fact that the entire cast returns, which we did not get in the last 2 Total Drama seasons. Even if most of the others didn't get to speak really, and the few who did speak said absolutely nothing of substance. Jacques and Jose got a really great downfall, and they even have a moment where it seemed like they were going to get clarity, but blow it off at the last minute for the most part. MacArthur and Sanders and Jeff and Brody do have some chemistry together, and it seems like MacArthur and Brody are going to go on a date at some point after this. Jacques and Jose were electric and consistently diabolical, as well as entertaining, from the beginning to the end. There was never really an episode where I outright disliked them, and they were my favorites the entire season. Seeing them cheat their way through everything was fun, and stirring the pot was great. They were definitely the stars of the season for sure, and I feel like they are actually the best and most dynamic villains of the entire franchise, since they didn't need to constantly be bailed out by a bunch of plot contrivances, but they weren't doing things that made absolutely no sense either. Not going to waste much time on Jeff and Brody, since I already talked about them. It was nice seeing Brody and MacArthur interact again, especially as he gained weight after his elimination, but they were shells of their former selves, meaning Jeff and Brody. And them being in the finale was really just underwhelming because they got eliminated fair and square by their own stupidity, and they were brought back at the second to last episode, at the semifinals, the penultimate episode. MacArthur and Sanders were great from beginning to end, with their good cop, bad cop dynamic and being cadets, so they aren't officiated police officers yet. Their rivalry with the ice dancers were great, and how they had a friendship with the surfers were great, as well as their interactions with other teams. Neither one of them respected one another much, but of course they learned how to interact properly throughout the season and would come to respect one another by the end. They had many great moments with this season and great interactions with others. I'm glad they made it to the finale. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the Ridonculous race, and it was a great way to end the franchise, though as we now know it, the franchise has not ended. I'm glad they decided to spoof another show, and because of the format, everyone has a conclusion pretty well, which was not necessarily the case with the Total Drama seasons. I think because they had to focus on character here and not necessarily the twists or trying to be as extreme as possible, which was an issue as the main show went on. The cast, for the most part, was great, but there was an issue with there being a lot of fodder teams, so you had to wait for half the season to get to the people that you actually care about. At the same time, it isn't a season that I rewatch much, since I haven't watched it after its initial airing until this rewatch. It was a great experience overall. And now, the next video I'm going to make relating to Total Drama is me ranking all the seasons, so that is going to be interesting. Thank you all for following me on this journey, and I will see you or hear you all soon, whichever one makes more sense.